Okay, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Mutile Mwongo. I am the program lead of the Climate and Health Research Lab, and I am delighted to welcome you all to the fourth session in our training on climate and health research. Today we are going to be talking about data analysis and interpretation, and we have our speaker, Dr. Nair Vasundaraa, who is going to be taking us through that. And just before we get started with the main session, if you could let us know in the chat something that you remember from the previous session, or something that you're looking forward to today. And then we'll just quickly do a recap and then go through today's main agenda. So anything that you recall, anything that struck you as interesting or new, or anything you're looking forward to for today, please let us know in the chat. It was about how to develop research questions. Yes. Perhaps some of you are joining for the first time, so you can just let us know what you're looking forward to learning, and what your interest is, what your area of interest is at the intersection of climate change and health. Okay. Okay, well, I think we should go ahead to introduce our speaker, but before that, I'll just do a recap of our previous session for those who are not available. So our last session, we talked about data collection and the methods of doing that and how to manage the data. And so we went through a session by Hajar Chams Edin, who is a PhD candidate, and she talked about techniques for collecting reliable data, some tools like interviews, surveys, focus groups, observation, and different ways to manage data, because once you have the data, it's so important to ensure that it is reliable and stored in a way that you can access it and it is not tampered with. So she went through different ways of naming files, organizing your data, cleaning it, and so on. And then the session ended with an interactive segment where there were breakout rooms and people were asked to develop a research topic, or rather survey questions and a specific research topic. So it was just a very brief session, so nothing very detailed or complex. And then in addition to developing survey questions, they needed to think about an unexpected problem or challenge they might face if they were actually doing this research, and a possible solution to that challenge. And so continuing from that session on data collection, we're now going to go into a session on data analysis and interpretation. And so, as I mentioned, Dr. Vasundaraa is taking us through that, and I'm just going to go through her bio and then allow her to introduce herself further. So Dr. Vasundaraa is an assistant professor at the Jindal Institute of Behavioral Sciences of Jindal Global University, and the Deputy Director for the Center for Community Mental Health at JIBS. She completed her MPhil and PhD in Psychiatric Social Work from the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences in 2023. Her doctoral research focused on developing a checklist on the different social determinants of health associated with brain infections, along with guidelines to care. She is a trained psychotherapist for providing care for psychiatric and neurological conditions at individual and family levels. She currently is engaged in research focused on child development, intersection of psychophysiology and students' mental health, social determinants of health in NCDs, climate change, and inclusive education. She has received grants from IHR, APYE, UGC, etc., to name a few, and has been awarded at various national and international platforms for her papers and contributions, and has published papers in PubMed and Scopus, indexed national and international journals of repute. Other than her academic interests, she is a trained dancer, a team leader, and always up for a good laugh. And so I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Vasundaraa. Over to you.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm Dr. Vasundaraa. Thank you so much, Mutile, for giving that brief introduction about me. So today we'll be talking about data analysis and interpretation. The way I have prepared the entire workshop is in a manner that involves the quantitative, qualitative, as well as the mixed methods research, because these are the different methodologies that individuals are utilizing. I will want my session to be brief, and I would want to actually understand from each one of you your own research and what is that in terms of help that you would need or where you are stuck in terms of data analysis. Hence, as we are speaking today, I would want you to look at your data parallelly or think about your data parallelly such that we are able to actually, so as the heading goes, it is on data analysis and interpretation. And the first question that comes is that why do we need to analyze the data? Predominantly, it is done to actually gather the data. When we gather the data because we have a research question or a relevant question in mind, and we need to fulfill, we need to answer that research question, which is why we undertake research and then we collect the data. Now, this data, depending on the methodology that we choose, it could be different. So this could be quantitative, where you have more, you have bigger sample size and you are quantitatively getting the numbers and running statistics on it. You can have qualitative, where you're getting more verbatims and narratives, and based on that, you're doing a thematic analysis on the same. Or it could be a mixed, where you have quant and qual, and then accordingly, you are actually trying to answer your research question. The most important thing when we start off in our data interpretation is data cleansing. Data cleansing essentially means that I will look at the quality of the data that I have. So I will look in my data, how many missing values are there? Are there any outliers? By outliers, essentially what we mean, we have a bell-shaped curve. And what are the ones that come in the end, which are outliers? And are there also any errors that are coming in the data that I have collected? And based on the errors, outliers, and the missing values, I will then cleanse out the data and take what is necessary. That's the first step. The focus obviously is about removing the duplicates that exist in our entire data set, correcting the errors if there is a possibility of checking, and if you think things are not adding up or things are meant to give you a different meaning, but you have collected something else, can you correct those errors and remove or add on the missing values that exist? The next stage that I am assuming that all of you must be familiar is the data transformation. Essentially, this is the phase wherein either manually or utilizing a particular software, this could be Excel, this could be SPSS, or any other software as per the methodology that you're choosing, you would prepare the data. And then once you put the entire data onto those Excel sheets, onto those SPSS data sheets, then you will be actually coding the data, thereby assigning numbers, assigning meaning to the data that you have collected. Yeah. So the idea here is to normalize and standardize the data that you have essentially collected throughout your entire methodology. Now, coming to quantitative data analysis and interpretation. Statistical analysis, so this the major two terminologies that you would be familiar with is one, the idea of the differential and the inferential statistics. Yeah. So we start off by checking first what is the normalcy in my data. Is it lying on the normal or the normality of the data itself? Why is this important? Is because this essentially helps you to choose the right set of tests for your quantitative data. So I will check. So this could be the Carl Pearson or the rank correlation test that I have to do. Post that, I will run the mean, median, and mode along with the standard deviation for my entire statistical analysis when I start based on the variables and the specific objectives and aims that you have for your own research. Once you have the baseline data understood, then you'll be going on the higher node where you are looking, saying we are doing ANOVA or any other kind of correlation analysis. Now, why do we do all these tests? Is essentially for you to achieve the research problem that you have, and also for you to is also answer the objectives that you have put forward in your entire research. Yeah. So you are supposed to do all of this test to give meaning to the data that you have collected. That is the idea of analysis and interpretation. Now, once you have analyzed the data, the question is how well can I put it out there for individuals to understand about my data? That's when the visualization part comes in. How can you share your audience with your research audience or any other audience or for yourself and bring out a meaning? This could be through charts, this could be through graphs, dashboards, reports, whichever you deem very importantly, the key considerations when you do a quantitative data analysis and interpretation is always and always remember in which context are you collecting the data and is it giving the impact that you expected it to be. There should not be bias in your research, possibility of a potential bias, thereby that can affect the validity and reliability of the data that you're collecting. Ethics, as stand important in any form of research, we need to ensure that ethical standards are taken care of in terms of handling and interpreting the data. Now, I'm not sure why the picture is a little hazy, but I would probably send across this paper for circulation. But this paper talks about what are the top six visualizations for qualitative data analysis that exist. So we have bar graphs, we have histograms, we have scatter diagrams, we have, different kind of pie charts, donut charts that you can use. I'm just naming some of them. And based on that, and what is that the objective that you want to actually show, you can utilize the specific charts and Is someone asking me something? Hello?
Sorry, I think you can go ahead. Kindly
Correct.
everyone mute yourselves while Dr. Vashundra is speaking.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what it's different types of charts, different types of visualization that you can use for your quantitative data. It is up to you of what meaning that you want to draw out from the data that you have collected. So one needs to understand what does a bar chart mean? What does a donut chart mean? What is the difference between a pie chart and a histogram and appropriately? So that is where the art of interpreting and visualization comes into play. Yeah. I will now take you to a case example, which I had prepared. Um, yes. So they were on this behavior was getting and should know. Okay. Can you see my screen?
It's
Yeah.
still loading.
All right.
Yeah.
So now what you see in front of you is essentially a qualitative that you have collected. So you have collected ID, age. Oh, okay. Is it visible now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when you see the data set in front of you, I have kept this as an example where imagine you did a survey. Your research was about, understanding a survey from the employees of a particular company. Department, how many years have they worked, job satisfaction, and you're rating it from 1 to 10. And say, imagine the focus that you have is job satisfaction. And this is the data that you have. This is a hypothetical data set. Your steps in the entire analysis would be as follows. You first will look at data cleansing, where you're looking at if there is any missing value in the entire data set. Is there any specific thing that is unclear to you, that is, not filled or wrongly filled, or there is inconsistent? And post that you will clean, then you will start first asking where does the normality lie, and then you will do the normality test, and then you would do descriptive statistics, right? So that is when you do mean, median, mode, standard deviation, all that comes in there. Yeah. Now say you have collected this data. How do you visualize and put it out? You could put a histogram if that is your objective. So I will plot an entire histogram with the details that I've got, and I'm going to show that how does the entire job. Can also put a box plot which will show the variation of uh, uh, satisfaction that across. And so do you understand the two ways in which I want to show where does the entire job satisfaction range lie? Second is, what is the difference? Is there a difference across the different departments essentially? And then I'm putting a box plot. So that is the entire idea. This was just an example for you to understand that how are you supposed to be running anything and everything as a test for your data. You have to be very choosy and very conscious of why are you doing a specific meal is very important. Then I can also do data transformation where I can calculate the average if I want. Um, Job satisfaction score per department. Post that when I want to run a higher end statistics, I could do ANOVA, where I want to see if there is statistically a difference in terms of, satisfaction level that exists, and if there is a significant difference. And I could do if higher the number of years is resulting in more satisfaction. Nowadays, predictive modeling, where a lot of linear regression and everything comes into play. And then you would interpret the entire data based on the basic and higher end statistics that you have run. So the different factors, what is the level in terms of satisfaction? Is there a correlation? If there is a correlation, how does it exist? And all of that. Then, and I will prepare a report to summarize the key findings and recommend job satisfaction. So the entire decision, and then you give the recommendations that, hey, listen, it may be the time that you start having better initiatives to have better job satisfaction. And in terms of quantitative data, how you can actually use the entire data analysis and interpretation. Now, let me quickly take you to qualitative data. In qualitative data, you will start, so your data collection, unlike in numbers, groups, or it could be even textual responses that you're getting. One may choose to do audio recording or even a manual recording, depending on the um, comfort and also the availability of an audio recorder or no. Yeah. The most important part that comes in converting your audio or the video recording, which you have got through consent, and then coding it. Now you are breaking it out systematically into specific codes and then themes. The text can be put under that, and you we are clearly make a map through the entire data that you have collected. Then the easiest thing is getting, then you reread your entire data. That is data familiarization, where you will read what I meant, and then I will do the proper coding, where I'm going to then divide them into themes, into concepts and categories. One may choose to do this manually. One may also choose to do this using a software. So people use Atlas DI, people use NVivo, but it is all dependent on how is the person trained, is the person comfortable, is the person able to afford. But that's an individual choice that people make. Yeah. But the idea is to do coding. So you could do it manually or you could do it using a particular software. Now, theme identification is the next step in the analysis where you are making group codes and you refine the themes. Now, this is the stage where you would have the main themes and the sub themes under it as well. Data interpretation is how you are putting that entire thematic map. How did contextualize the findings? How you are establishing the through your study. Then you will bring in a second person and you do a member checking on it, such that the entire process you would explain to them and that person would also follow it further. And then again, reporting. Now, major things in terms of other than people nowadays also use word clouds. Now, this is an example of a word cloud. Thematic maps, This is an example of thematic map, and this is network mapping. Yeah. So these are three different methods of visualizations that people are now utilizing a lot in the um, qualitative data collection as well. Now, let me quickly take you to an case scenario of a qualitative data. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry,
Apologies.
Tapashundra, the connection is quite choppy, so we can't hear
Okay.
everything you're
So
saying.
in the qualitative section here, what do you see? Oh, can you hear me now?
We can hear on and off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but we can't quite
Hello?
see you. The screen is frozen.
Oh, oh. I am going to put my video off just in case my audio is better now. Is it better now?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, is it better?
Yeah, it's much better now. Thanks.
All right. So, okay. So, qualitative data. All right, all right. So I'm going to keep my video off. You're able to hear me properly. Now, this is an example of a qualitative data set. Now, imagine you have conducted series of interviews. Again, I'm going to stick on the same theme of employees and their experiences of, like, recently we had a lot of work from home, right? So imagine you're talking to a couple of individuals, and the couple, I feel more productive working from home, but I'm missing face-to-face interaction. Code two is remote work allows me to, have a better work-life balance, but I do feel disconnected from the company updates. Code three is the flexibility is great, but I am struggling with setting boundaries with my work and home life. Now, these three are from three different individuals who are, say, probably in the same cadre. Okay. How will I go to my analysis? The first thing that I would do is reread each of the quote and I will identify the themes. Say here, the main three themes that I have identified is to say that most of the employees feel that they are productive, they appreciate the flexibility of the remote work. Social interaction wise, it looks like there is a common concern that they're missing the face-to-face interaction and there is a disconnect. Work-life balance of challenges in terms of boundary. The next stage, wherein you're now interpreting the data. So you start off interpreting wherein you're like, oh, productivity seems to be a common problem. Then team interaction is another major thing that they're saying that there needs to be strategies for it. And boundary settings, we need recommendations. So this is how the analysis and the interpretation would work in a qualitative data. And this I could choose to put also in, say, for example, as a word cloud, I could choose to put as a thematic map, depending on what I feel appropriate for the last set, which is on the mixed methods study. Okay. Now, mixed method wise, we have spoken about quantitative data. We have also spoken about qualitative data, right? Now, uh, the method of collecting the data would remain the same based on what you choose to do. How do we integrate these two sets of data is mostly the tricky area where we start off the analysis. Now, the first thing could be a convergent design where I am parallelly taking the qualitative data and quantitative data, and then I'm going to sit and compare and combine the findings. So, say I could choose survey results and interview themes, and I would corroborate them or I would differ with them. So, that is a comparative and concurrent design. Then there is explanatory design where I would first do a quantitative phase and then I will do a qualitative phase. The idea is the qualitative data is to use to elaborate on the quantitative findings. So, say for example, in the example that I gave you, if the survey is saying that the job satisfaction is poor, then post that I may have a follow-up interview with these individuals to understand what is the reason for this dissatisfaction. An exploratory design would be where I am first doing a qualitative phase, testing that in my quantitative phase. So, for example, I first conduct interviews or focus groups to understand, okay, what's the status of customer satisfaction? And then to quantify the impact, I will go ahead and then do a survey data. So this I will choose to do it. Oh, okay. I will just quickly now take you to an example. So again, the method of visualization for a quantitative phase, I could do the type of charting that I want. Statistically, I could do the inferential or differential statistics. Qualitative one, I could use word clouds, thematic maps, or just put the themes and excerpts there, and then finally put a triangulation. So I'm going to take it to chat with all of you to understand your status of data collection and where are you stuck in terms of your analysis. Now, the scenario that I've put here is imagine that you're conducting a study to understand the factors for employee retention. You're doing a survey, you're checking, okay, what's the status of job satisfaction, compensation, where does the career growth lie? Okay, and you've run a statistical analysis and you're like, okay, it looks like job satisfaction and career growth are the predictors for retention. So you've done an entire correlation and regression to find this. Qualitatively, you've conducted in-depth interviews with the employee who have already left the
Vasundaraa, we've
company, and
lost
then
you.
you have generated themes from where lack of advancement opportunities have come out. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's a bit unstable, but you can go ahead.
I am genuinely sorry. I do not know the reason for this. It's showing actually full here. Anyway, I hope I can continue now. So, what I was saying is that when we start integrating data, I am going to link the statistical data of job satisfaction and retention, and I will look at what are the themes that are coming in my qualitative data, and then I will find out the results from there. Okay. The second way could be I will first take the explanatory model where I look at the interview data and I say that, okay, what are the factors? Career growth is important, and then conduct the survey results for it. Or I could do the exploratory, where I find that mentorship is a problem, insufficient career advancement opportunities are not there. And then I will run the further quantitative studies to look at what is the level of job satisfaction and retention, right? So these are the different, interpret the data, thereby helping me structure the entire process. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I would want now to understand from all of you at what stage of your own researches are you? What are the struggles? And to so it'll be nice if you can actually parallelly open your own researches, look at it, and tell me what is the data that you have collected. You could decide to unmute the chat box. That is also fine with me. But I would now want to understand from all of you what is the status of your data that you have collected.
Okay, so it's an open floor to anyone. If you have done research before, any questions that or challenges that you may have faced, you are welcome to pose them to Dr. Vashundra.
Or if you also, like, I know that say I'm just looking at the chat box as well, if there is anything that you would want me to repeat or clarify for any of you, I'll be happy to do that. So do let me know on the same.
I see one person says, I do not understand exploratory under integration of mixed methods. So maybe asking for a clarification.
All right, so let me, I'm going to keep my video off. um oh, all right, so should I probably type?
Um, maybe you can open but not share your screen. And then if possible, we can refer to your slides after and share them with the participants.
All right. So, to answer Nana's question now, exploratory comes when I'm first collecting qualitative data. So this could be FGD, this could be interview, this could be narrative, whichever you choose to collect. With that, I will create a specific hypothesis. That hypothesis is something that I'm testing in my quantitative phase, and then finally seeing what is the result that is coming out of it. So it's very important to have those specific objectives for qualitative as well as quantitative. And finally, what are you aiming to answer by using this particular methodology? That becomes very, very important in a I think Anna's question was about Shepherd Stephen. So Shepherd, I was basically saying that if you have any questions or anything in what I have presented so far that you would like me to clarify, sorry, that you would like me to clarify, I'll be happy to answer that. Okay, so this is the general participants. It's fine if you have not been included in any research, not any research, and you have questions in your mind, I'm happy to take them as well. Okay, Gavasika, different when presenting results, discussing results. Okay, that's a nice question actually. Um, doing when you do when you do research, right? What you're presenting is essentially what you've collected, and what you have collected is essentially what you aim to collect. So your research question is you have collected the data. You presenting the results is basically me saying that, okay, I found that these many individuals were happy, these many individuals were not happy, right? That is what presenting the result would mean. And then the second way could also be this was the reason that they were happy, this was the reason that they were not happy. Okay, so this could be written, this could be in terms of different results, is essentially when I would look at previous researches on the data. Today they're saying that they're happy with it, but 3 years ago when they did a particular research, they said they were not happy with it. Or it could also be that they say that that time they were happy with it, and it looks like happiness is continuing. That is what me discussing my results would mean. And practical doing research is you doing everything from your research question to establishing a names and objective, you collecting the data, coding the data, analyzing the data, writing up the data, everything. So that is the answer to your question, Gab. I hope I answered it. Okay.
Kelechi, you are able to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Okay. So
So,
histogram. Sorry.
oh, okay. No, she can go ahead if she's still answering the question.
Oh, I was just looking at this particular question that Aaron had asked.
Okay, yes, please do.
Okay. So, Aaron, histogram, if you understand, you've been able to understand what essentially mean, median, and mode means, right? So you do it manually, you do it on Excel, or you do it on SPSS or any other thing. A histogram is basically you having a visual distribution of your quantity look like very sticky to each other. Why does it look very sticky to each other? Is because when you look at, like, someone's age. So say, for example, I have to collect all your ages and I have to make a histogram with that. 17, 18, 20, 21, etc. Everything comes to the lowest to the highest will be all together on one graph, on one histogram, but everything will be stuck to each other, unlike bar graph where it you have separate. Such that when I say where does the majority lie, where does the minority lie? That is the idea of having a histogram for me to understand where is the middle point and where does the halves come and where does my entire graph lie. Yeah. So that is as far as histogram is concerned. Mentorship program. Okay, so this I think is answered. Hope you're able to get, or else feel free to write to me if I can answer anything. Their hands one by one, I can answer your questions.
Yes, and Dr. Vashundra, maybe you could again turn off your video so that we're able to hear the
Okay,
audio clearly. Thank you.
sure, sure. Yeah, so people who are raising their hands, one by one, if you could ask your questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. So my question is concerning the mixed method study that we went over during your presentation. We
Yes,
learned that
Kelechi.
the
Go
three
ahead.
ways of integrating data were the convergent design, the explanatory design, and the exploratory
Okay.
design. So I wanted to confirm where one of these can be substituted for another. So do all three of these have to be used in combination for a mixed
Yes.
method study? Can you use just a combination of the two? And then also, is there
No,
one
no,
that's
no, no,
considered the
no.
best out of all of the three?
No, you cannot use all the three. So as I was telling you, if my objective is, I want to ask, say for example, I want to check the effectivity of this fellowship that all of you are attending, right? So I could parallel, like I could divide the entire group into say half and half, where to one half I give only skills and I ask them to assess and tell me your entire how useful did you find, and you put your a rank say 0 to 10, and to another to understand how things are. Can you hear me properly now,
Yes, we can hear you.
or I'm still not audible? Okay. All right. So when I do that, what I'm trying to do by doing half and half, Kelechi, is that I'm trying to take the two data sets, converge them, and say that, okay, hey, listen, this is the reason for the why the fellowship is going really well or not going really well. I'm converging the data there, right? On the other hand, if my objective is, I would, it's an unexplored area. I have no idea about him altogether. I would want to have a hypothesis because I do not have a hypothesis. At that time, I may choose to do an exploratory method, conduct interviews from the ground, stakeholders, and then develop a hypothesis, which then I will test it in my quantitative phase, right? There, my idea is to generate the data and then test it and then validate it. All right. The third one is basically if I want to explain why things are manning in the particular area, or establish method where I will first collect the data quantitatively and say that, okay, this is the level of job attrition, or these are the number of individuals who are leaving. And then I want to go and check why and what is the reason for leaving. I will do interview with people who have already left the organization, right? Because the idea is the future recommendations I'm trying to propose there, such that system can change. So this is how in mixed method, when will I use a convergent, when will I use a explanatory and exploratory methods, which is why I reiterate myself in saying that your research question becomes extremely important, and then only you can actually answer your question, Kelechi. Kelechi,
All right, thank you for
are
your
you
response. I think that's your
all right? Thank you. I see patience, your hand being raised. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Greetings. Yeah, so my question is on I just need some clarity on what
Yes.
informs the kind of analysis that you're supposed to do. Okay, yes, I understand you're supposed to kind of like based on your objectives and then run an analysis. But what confuses me most is, how do you know that the analysis you're doing is actually sensible? I don't know. It's actually sensible, yes. And then another thing is, like, okay, according to what I have known about research so far, I know that, okay, for example, climate change could be in the line of like agriculture or natural sciences, and like the significancy level could be like at 95%. And then in health, it's like at is it 99%? So if you're integrating climate change and health, what is the significancy level? Like, what do you base on to say that, this maybe the whatever you've gotten is either significantly different or not significantly different? Thank you.
Uh, yeah, thank you for the question, Patience. So, Patience, if it depends also on, say, the same question that you have just put out there. Uh, how do you wish to study it? Do you want to have quantitative measures to answer this question? Do you want to have qualitative measures to answer this question? Or do you want to have a combination of both?
Or am I like supposed to kind of like give an answer to that?
How much data is already or evidence or the review of literature that we speak, how much literature is essentially already present about that given research question you have in mind. Is it something that is widely researched? It has a lot of scales, and you go and speak about it, you will have individuals to respond. Then you will do a quantitative data. If you are taking a particular area which has nothing at all, then, or rather, you have very few, then maybe a qualitative measure would be a better way to go about. Um, but if you want to go ahead and say, you want to converge the data, or you want to have future directions, or, those are your focus, then you will do a mixed method, right? So it is not about the sense about it, but it is about how do you wish to go about answering the question that you have in mind. I think that is the first decision that we need to make. If we are able to make that clear, then your analysis and interpretation becomes easy. Was I able to answer your question, Patience?
Oh yeah, okay, yes you were, but okay, I was trying to look at it in this way of like the real analysis, huh? The real
Uh-huh.
analysis of, for example, I don't know, after like you've cleaned the data, you've already organized it, and then maybe you're running it in a software, like an analytical software. What
Yeah, yeah.
informs what informs whether you're supposed to do ANOVA or
Oh, okay. All right.
some,
So, okay. So that again depends on, so say for example, you have two variables, or you have four variables, six variables, depending on, how many variables you have. The first thing that you need to do in a quantitative data is run the normality testing, right? That's where, Carl Pearson or the rank Spearman testing people do. Um, that is being done essentially to understand, is my data normally distributed, or my data is not normally distributed. If my data is normally distributed, I have to do parametric tests. Say, for example, ANOVA, um, all those T tests, right? These all are when you are having parametric. If it is if it is a non-parametric data, then there are different tests which they, like say Wilcoxon test, all those are non-parametric tests that I need to run, right? And all these as options are actually there on SPSs or Excel or R, whichever software that you use for your data analysis. So that is how you actually understand that which test to do and which test to not do, right? The second thing is me asking myself that, oh, like I was giving you the example in my case scenarios, do I want to understand that how many individuals are like what is the level of job satisfaction? I may just do a histogram, like a mean median mode, right? I want to understand that, oh, is there a difference between the department? I may plot a histogram there, right? If I want to understand that, which department, like where is the difference lying, I will do a ANOVA. And if I want to understand that, which are the different variables that are responsible for one's happiness in the company itself, then I would do a linear regression, right? So that is how I will choose which test to run and which test to not run in a quantitative. This could be inductive, deductive, or reflexive in nature, depending on again what I am well versed with. And based on that, I will go ahead and further inform. Again, there are 6 different approaches under qualitative that people utilize. So someone would do experiences when they do phenomenological study. Someone would choose to do narratives where it is a narrative approach. People do case studies. So again, it differs from study to study and methodology to methodology. Um, did I now is it better for you patients?
Yes, it is. Then maybe on the other question that I asked about the significancy levels, since this is now climate change combined with health.
We always, if it is a quantitative data, we always stick to 95%, irrespective of um, how the research question is. So, could you mute yourself maybe? Yeah, thank you. So, you would still stick to 95% in terms of significance because that level is important on in a quantitative study. So yes. Okay. Um, Kumara, Rachel, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I have 2 questions. I'd share them in the chat, but let me ask the first one. I
Okay.
wanted to know how I can effectively utilize data analysis to identify and interpret climate-related health trends in vulnerable populations or marginalized groups in communities. And then what methods ensure the accuracy of these interpretations when dealing with incomplete or inconsistent data?
Um, if you feel that quantitatively when you're getting the answers of my experience with working with the climate change and different um, data sets, I have actually felt that qualitative measures have been much better as compared to quantitative measures simply because we do not have a lot of scales to actually measure what we probably have in mind. Online measures do not really help. So yeah, but I also know of people who have used quantitative measures and they have been able to get significant results with their studies as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then I had one last question. Um,
Sure.
What are the common pitfalls or challenges in data interpretation that researchers often overlook? And how can we avoid them when analyzing climate and health data? Thank you.
Um, That's a good question. Actually, especially in quantitative data, we've been seeing a lot of like during COVID onwards, I think a lot of us were attuned to sending out Google Forms, Survey Monkey forms, etc. And at one point, we actually would end up receiving the data which would be half filled or, not giving the exact thing that what we have in mind. It may be a good idea to make, when you're making your entire forms, to make each and every question that is important for you, make that as an important field in your forms as well, such that the person needs to fill it and it doesn't come like an empty sheet to you. Major pitfalls that we see is in terms of having a lot of missing data or having errors in the data. And one of the best ways to actually cleanse your data is actually you do a pilot testing first itself. So with all the scales that you are aiming, or whichever qualitatively, quantitatively you are wishing to do, I think it's a good idea to first do a pilot testing with, 10 to 30 set of individuals and seeing how the response is, and accordingly then making the change depending on what responses that you have got, right? That is a good idea. And then, like I said, if you are collecting it in person, ensure that you are asking all the things that are relevant. You don't make your own assumptions. And if you're collecting it through online method, make everything mandatory and compulsory for them to fill at least what is important, such that you're getting most of the data. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Yes, Favor. Tell me.
Thank you, Doctor, for this session. So this is my question. Are there really any criterion for selecting a sampling method? Thank you.
Sorry, is there a criteria for?
For selecting a sampling method.
Okay. Now quantitatively, that again depends on which population are you wishing to study this on. If this is a population that is like very easily accessible and available to you, then you can use, the random methods, for sure. But if you think that this is a population which is like, there is no proper listing, it's a little difficult to actually reach out to them, then you can actually go on the purposive or convenience or snowball sampling in a quantitative measure. In a qualitative measure, if again this is something that has very clear-cut structure, then theoretical sampling would be a good choice. But if you feel it is not so, then you can stick to the purposive sampling.
Thank you, Ma.
All right. Cynthia, please tell me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for, I'm sorry I even came late, but I actually wanted to ask what kind of data analysis can one use in analyzing the effects of climate change on like urban transportation systems and air quality? What kind of data, how can we analyze such data?
You can analyze it both using numbers or using verbatims, but it depends on what are you comfortable in collecting the data. If you are taking quantitatively, then you should have a huge sample size and you can actually run ANOVA, you can run regression and actually get the answer to that. If you're doing it too qualitatively, then you can do a good deductive thematic analysis and actually get the results.
Okay, thank you. And secondly, we are from Niger Delta and working with local communities. We've carried out researches, but I also want to understand the kind of data analysis that one can use to carry out the urban heat Iceland or the patterns that affect the local climate conditions and public health outcomes in the urban areas.
I think for those population, a mixed method or a qualitative method would be better.
I didn't get that.
I'm saying for those populations and for those variables, a mixed method or a qualitative data would be better.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Nana, I see your question. I recently collected the data, but there were 12 responses. Incomplete data, most of the pre-operative values were available for them, but most of I could find. No, I think you should not keep because if you're doing like a pre-post testing here, Sunana, you may not be able to actually run the analysis. It would have been nice if they would have made it mandatory for them to answer that if because when it is not mandatory is when a lot of incomplete data comes. So for you to actually run the analysis, one, the sample size is very small, like so I would recommend you to actually increase the sample size and actually then collect the data such that you're able to have valid analysis and interpretation. Okay, Rachel's I have answered. Okay, Cynthia's I've answered as well. Okay.
So we have Lydia and one in the chat as well. So maybe Lydia can go first and then
Yeah, so I'll
Tobias.
just take Tobias's question. What is the best way to get? Yeah, I'll just finish Tobias' question and then I'll come to Lydia. Best way to carry data analysis which is cost effective for the upcoming researchers. Well, SPSS is not that costly. If you are a university student, you have the universities itself who get you the library access comes, so you can definitely utilize it. If you're doing a quantitative data, if again you are doing a qualitative data, Atlas TI again has a university access for both if you're a teacher. So both are pretty much cost effective because the university can do the necessary and you can get the student access or the faculty access to it. So that's the way to go. And nowadays people are even using a lot of AI methods to do that. So yeah, not a difficulty. I think AI is definitely helping, provided you use it in the right manner. Yeah. Yes, yes, Lydia, go ahead.
Okay.
Lydia,
Thank you.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Um, Thank you so much for this session. It has been quite informative and very
Yeah.
interesting. I just needed a little bit more of clarification on visual representation or analysis of qualitative data. The charts on the screen that you shared, I felt like you could maybe do
Okay.
a little bit more explanation on them kindly. But the rest of your presentation, I understood only for that part of visual representation of qualitative data. Thank you.
So, yeah. Um, so only for the qualitative one you're asking me, correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
All right. So, qualitative data, so for that, you in terms of visualization, so people themes, sub-themes alone, and word cloud has become very common. The app's name is called as word cloud itself. So wherein even in the softwares you can create word clouds. So the major themes that are repeating in your entire word patterns. The sizes increase for the major themes, and for the smaller themes, the sizes again reduce, which helps a person to interpret your data clearly. Second one is a thematic map, wherein you show the connected lines as to like how one theme relates to the other, and uh, and how does the entire all the data that you've collected, how is the map portrayed. Narrative map is essentially saying that the narrative that you have got, so basically from the words that people have uttered, and what are the major emotions or themes that are reflecting out, those alone get highlighted. And in that manner, people actually portray the different studies. So it's an interesting thing, a good way of visualization. People, researchers across are using that a lot. So I would definitely recommend really accessible ones, and use it for your own benefit. Yeah. Okay. So I see two more questions here on the chat box. Which is the best and most effective method of data collection? There is no best and most effective method of data collection, John. It always depends on what you have the research question and what you have the objectives, and based on that, anything can become best, anything can become most effective, provided you know how to do it properly. Yeah. Okay, Sunana, so you have 384, then I think yes, then you should leave the 12 responses which are incomplete, because otherwise um your entire larger 384 will have an effect on that. So yes. So take off the 12 and then just analyze without it, and you will have a better understanding of what's the impact in your study.
Great.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm Cynthia. I actually wanted to find out if it's possible to use the random research collection to get population. Is it possible to use that method?
I mind typing it because I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. I was asking if one can get accurate analysis using the random method for population to get population in research.
Voice, your voice is breaking, Cynthia. I don't know. I don't know, is it mine or would you mind typing it, or Mutile, if you're able to hear it, would you mind telling me?
I think what she is asking is if it's okay to use random sampling, but I also didn't hear it very clearly because of the background noise. So Cynthia, maybe you can type it and you can
Okay,
type your
sorry, I'm
question
trying to
there.
type it.
Kindly type your question, Cynthia, because there's a lot of background noise. And there's also one in the
Okay, I
chat
see
by
one question
William.
as I wait for Cynthia's question. Yeah, I was just asking. So William's asking, what type of data is best used in conducting research in crisis area? Oh, well, if it's a crisis area, not everyone will be interested in, like, talking in detail. So a quick um quantitative measure, like a short scale, which is quickly checking. Say, for example, floods have happened in a particular place, and you want to understand what's the health status, and you want to screen. So you can't do a detailed one, but a short screening can be done on a large population. So those kind of populations, you can do quantitative measures which are quick in nature. After some time, say for example, you want to do a follow-up to understand what's their mental health status, qualitative study with them, provided they are in a position to speak about it. That is how in crisis area or environment you could plan your research. Random method to conduct research on urban population and rural population. You can, but again, depends on the availability.
We've lost you, Doctor.
So I'm answering to Cynthia saying that you can use a random method, but it would depend on the size of the population, the access that you have, and the availability of the individuals who would consent to the study.
Great. I think that's all of the questions we've had. Thank you so much for your comprehensive responses. And we're about to start wrapping up. I don't know if you have any other last minute takes that you want to share, Dr. Vasundaraa, because now we can just start to do our final segment of the session. If nothing, I'll just go ahead and invite everyone to respond to our Mentimeter, which will be shared in just a minute. So I'm just going to share the link where you can give us some feedback about the session, what you learned, and so on. Okay. So in the chat, I am posting the link to the Mentimeter. There we go. Please head over to Menti and give us some feedback. So what did you learn from this session? Do you think there are other things that you still need to explore even further? What do you think you will implement in your research?